My boyfriend laughed after telling me I was dead weight. Now he's crying outside my door, begging to see the baby he didn't know exists. 2 months later, he was drunk in front of my house, yelling my name. I had been with Liam for a little over 3 years. He was nice and attentive, keeping eye contact rather than always looking for someone more fascinating to talk to. Things flowed swiftly between us. By our 1-year anniversary, we were living together in a cute, tiny apartment that we could barely afford. Not ideal timing monetarily, but the rent in this city is exorbitant no matter when you relocate. So, while our connection wasn't perfect, it felt strong. We shared similar goals: eventually owning a home, traveling, and possibly having children. Liam was always more worried about appearance than I was. He was concerned with what car we drove, which places we frequented, and if we posted the best photos on Instagram. I should have paid more heed to the red flag, but hindsight is 20/20, right? Anyway, around 4 months ago, I was feeling nauseated in the mornings and fatigued all the time. I took a pregnancy test primarily to rule it out. We were cautious, but not overly cautious. And 2 pink lines. I recall sitting on the lavatory floor, staring at that small plastic stick as if it were inscribed in hieroglyphics. I took approximately a week to process before informing anyone. My best buddy Barbara came first. She brought wine to our girls' night, and when I switched to water, she knew right away. She asked all the appropriate questions about what I wanted, how Liam would react, and practical matters like insurance and maternity leave. It helped me to order my thoughts. As for Liam, I opted to wait. My birthday was coming up in 3 weeks, which looked like ideal timing. We'd already arranged a modest celebration at our apartment for our closest friends, and I thought it would be nice to share the news with everyone I cared about at once. Again, hindsight. What a witch. The weeks before my birthday were weird. I was battling with morning sickness, which should actually be called all-day sickness by the way, and trying to keep it from Liam. He didn't notice, which I attributed to his busy schedule. He had begun coming home later, spending more time on his phone, and appearing distant. I assumed he was stressed over something at work. My birthday was on a Saturday. I spent the morning setting everything while Liam went to pick up the cake. It took him about 3 hours, but whatever. Around 6 p.m., Barbara and her husband arrived, as did our friends Aaron and Sergio, my cousin Lana, who was visiting, and a few others, including Maria, whom I had known since college. The party was going great. Good food, plenty of drinks, sparkling water disguised as vodka soda for me, music, and laughter. I had planned to make my statement after the cake, but I kept capturing Barbara's attention across the room. She'd give me these tiny encouraging nods that made my stomach turn with tense anticipation. Around 9 p.m., Liam clinked his glass to grab everyone's attention. My heart had virtually stopped. Had he found out? Was he about to steal my thunder? He delivered this entire speech about how special I was and how fortunate he was to have me in his life, all while staring me directly in the eyes. Then he gave me a little, neatly wrapped package with a silk ribbon. The room became quiet. Everyone was watching, some with their phones out, ready to record the moment. I recall assuming it was an engagement ring and had a little moment of concern about whether I should still reveal the pregnancy if he proposed. I then opened the box. There wasn't a ring inside. It was a folded piece of paper. I opened it, perplexed, and read the words that are virtually burnt into my brain now. I'm leaving you. You're useless, and I deserve better. Your stuff will be packed by Monday. I stared up at him, convinced that this was some sort of awful joke, but his expression had completely changed, chilly, detached, and almost amused. Then he announced, loud enough for everyone to hear, that we were finished. That it had been enjoyable, but he had outgrown me. Then he laughed. Like, really laughed. A few other individuals in the room laughed as well, plainly assuming it was a joke we had prepared. But then Liam turned and walked out the front door without saying anything. The hush that ensued was deafening. I stood there, note in hand, pregnancy announcement dying in my throat, as our pals stared between me and the door, waiting for someone to yell, "Just kidding." But no one did. Barbara was the first to relocate. She crossed the room, grabbed the note from my hand, read it, and grumbled that he was an incredible jerk. Then everyone began talking at once, expressing confusion, anxiety, and fury on my behalf. And me? I just smiled. Not because I wasn't devastated. I was. Not because I wasn't humiliated. I certainly was. But at that time, I recognized something important. Liam had no idea what was coming. He thought he had all the cards. He believed he'd organized this beautiful exit, this public execution of our relationship in which he got to be the dominant one. But he was unaware I was pregnant with his child. He had no idea that I had discovered his hidden credit card statements 2 weeks previously while looking for a stamp in his desk drawer. He had no idea that I had already viewed the texts on his Apple Watch while he was showering. He definitely should have enabled two-factor authentication, LOL. Most significantly, he was unaware that I am not the type of woman who collapses when pushed. I am the type of person who thinks strategically. So I grinned. I thanked everyone who came. I assured them that I was fine, I wasn't, and that they didn't have to worry about me, but they did. I even cut the birthday cake Barbara had brought and distributed chunks, as if we were celebrating the end of something rather than mourning it. Maria left almost quickly, stating she was sick. Isn't this an interesting time? Don't worry, we'll get to her. The others stayed to assist me clean up and offer some place to stay, shoulder to cry on, and alibis for murder, mostly kidding. By midnight, everyone had left except Barbara, who insisted on staying on my couch despite my pleas. When we were alone, I finally broke down. The pregnancy, the treachery, the humiliation. Everything came crashing down at once. Barbara just held me and let me cry, not trying to console me with bogus reassurances or those awful, everything happens for a reason, platitudes that people love to use when they don't know what else to say. When I eventually calmed down, about 2 a.m., I informed Barbara about the pregnancy. She wasn't startled. She claimed she had assumed based on the way I'd been acting lately. Then I showed her my credit card statements, which included hotel payments, upscale restaurants, and jewelry purchases that had somehow never made it to me. I read through the screenshots I'd taken of texts to M, which included heart emoticons and plans to meet when I was working late. We both knew who M was, especially after Maria's sudden departure from the party. We stayed up till daybreak, discussing ideas and making arrangements. Barbara inquired about notifying Liam about the pregnancy, but I remained firm. He would find out eventually, but only when I was ready, not before. Regarding his romance with Maria and the financial lies, I was not going to fall to his level of petty retaliation. But I'd make sure the whole truth came out. Barbara gazed at me with a mixture of concern and admiration as I expressed my concerns. She mentioned that I may be frightening at times when I had that determined look in my eye. I just laughed. A genuine chuckle. The first since opening that dreadful box. That night, as I laid in bed alone for the first time in years, with one hand resting on my still flat stomach, I made 2 vows. One to my unborn child. I promised to create a stable, caring home, no matter what. And one for myself. I would emerge from this stronger than before. Liam believed he was writing the end of our narrative with that horrible note. And if there's one thing I've learned from all those true crime podcasts I listen to while doing laundry, it's that the best retribution necessitates patience, planning, and a clear mind, all of which I have in abundance. Next time, I'll tell you what transpired in the days and weeks that followed, including how I confirmed who he left me for. Spoiler alert, it was not a surprise. And the first indications that his great escape strategy was not going quite as planned. First update. Hello Reddit. Anna here with the promised update. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone who left positive comments on my previous post. Isn't it strange that strangers on the internet can be kinder than individuals you've known for years? So, where have I left off? Right, the birthday party from hell. Liam had just gone out after publicly humiliating me, leaving me stunned with a pregnancy I hadn't revealed to anybody but Barbara. Let me continue from the aftermath. The following morning, I awoke to the aroma of coffee and pancakes. Barbara was still there, bless her, acting as if nothing had happened and checking on me every 5 minutes. She kept pressing that I eat something, clearly concerned for the baby. I managed a few bites before nausea set in. Morning sickness is such a pleasure. Liam did not return on Sunday, which was both a relief and a pain. I spent the majority of the day bouncing between numbness, wrath, and a strange, detached sensation of planning. I made so many lists. I needed to straighten out some financial issues, schedule doctor's appointments, people to inform. It was as if my brain switched into survival mode, focusing on practicality rather than confronting the emotional hurricane. Barbara assisted me with packing up some of Liam's belongings. Not everything, but enough to make it plain that I did not expect him to return. My phone was constantly filled with messages from our pals. Most were supportive, perplexed, and wondered if I was okay. A couple came from common acquaintances who seemed more concerned with gossip than my well-being. And who is glaringly absent from the alarmed chorus? Maria. Do you remember her from the party? Who got sick and left? Yeah. Monday morning dawned, bringing with it the reality. I called in ill to work, something I never do. I also scheduled an appointment with my doctor to confirm the pregnancy and discuss options. Around noon, when I was researching tenant rights, because the rental agreement had both our names, I received this text from Liam. I'll be there at 7 to get my things. Make sure you're not there. The audacity, right? I stared at the message for 5 minutes before answering with a simple, no. Just that. There's no explanation. There are no alternate suggestions, just a firm limit. He called immediately, and I declined. Then I contacted Barbara, and she rallied the soldiers. By 6:30, my flat was full with friends, Aaron, Sergio, Lana, who had extended her visit, and a few others. A shield of individuals who loved me. Liam arrived at precisely 7 a.m., and his expression when he saw the welcoming committee. Priceless. Aaron, who is about 6 feet 4 inches and built like a brick wall, just handed him one suitcase with some clothes and essentials, telling him firmly that the rest of his stuff would be available when he arranged a proper time and demonstrated some basic human decency. He tried to act tough and demanded to know what was going on, but Aaron, who is about 6 feet 4 inches and built like a brick wall, just handed him one suitcase with some clothes and essentials. Liam tried to capture my attention as I sat on the couch, purposely calm. He began to say something about how ridiculous this was, and that I should just let him get his things. I finally spoke directly to him, telling him that he should consider himself lucky that I hadn't changed the locks yet, and that we could discuss the rest of his belongings once I'd had time to process his wonderful birthday surprise. He began to protest, but something in my look must have frightened him off. He got the suitcase and departed, but not before saying something about my need for an audience. Rich, coming from the man who abandoned me in front of all of our friends, don't you think? After he went, I grieved again, not for him, but for the future I had hoped for the plans that needed to be rewritten, for the child who deserved better than a cruel father. The next morning, I hired a locksmith to get the locks changed. Now, about Maria. I had my suspicions from the moment she bolted from the party, but I needed confirmation. It came from an unexpected source, Sergio. He texted me Tuesday evening to let me know that Liam and Maria had been seeing each other. He and Aaron had seen them together 2 months ago, but couldn't be sure it wasn't innocent. He apologized for not telling me sooner. It was like being struck in the stomach while also feeling vindicated. I knew Liam was cheating, but I didn't know with whom. Finding out it was Maria, someone who had been in my home, eaten my food and accepted my friendship, was a unique type of betrayal. Rather than approaching either of them, I opted to wait, observe, and gather information. Perhaps I've been listening to too many true crime podcasts, but patience is essential in these situations. Over the next week, I concentrated on practical matters. I confirmed my pregnancy at 10 weeks, met with a lawyer about the apartment lease and asset division, froze our joint credit card, and opened a new bank account in my name for basic protection. Fortunately, we were not married, so there was no divorce drama. I didn't tell anyone except Barbara about the pregnancy just yet, not out of denial, but because I needed to get my ducks in a row first. 2 weeks after the birthday fiasco, Liam texted again, seeking to talk things through and collect more of his possessions. I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near our apartment, a public place during the day, on my terms. He looked terrible, which gave me a little jolt of satisfaction. I'm not proud of it. He was unshaven, had circles under his eyes, and was wearing a wrinkled shirt. He immediately launched into what I can only describe as a half-assed explanation. He'd been unhappy for a while, felt trapped, and thought a clean break would be easier for everyone. I let him babble for a while before simply asking if Maria was making him happy. The look on his face was priceless, pure deer in headlights amazement. He stuttered through denials that were so apparent that I almost chuckled. I broke him off and told him I knew about Maria, about the hotel expenses on his secret credit card, about the jewelry he bought her with money we supposedly needed for rent, and that he should be honest for once. He deflated like a punctured balloon. He tried the "it's not what you think" line, but I cut him off again. I told him that what mattered now was that he could pick up the rest of his belongings on Saturday at 2 p.m. Aaron would be there to supervise, and I didn't want to hear from him again unless it was through my lawyer. His voice literally trembled when he repeated, "Lawyer." He claimed we didn't need attorneys and could work things out ourselves. I remained calm, even though my pulse raced, and told him we were past that stage, that he'd made his decision very plain at my birthday party, and I was simply respecting it. As I stood to leave, he grabbed my wrist, not forcefully, but desperately, and inquired about the apartment, specifically how I was going to finance it alone, given that my job only covered half the rent. That's when everything clicked into place. The actual reason for his anxiety for this meeting was not closure or recovering his belongings. It was about money. Liam didn't realize, or conveniently forgot, that I'd been paying more than half of the rent for the past year. His income had been drying up, and his situation was more precarious than he admitted. He'd been living beyond his means, using my steady income as a safety net while presenting himself as the primary provider to our friends and, apparently, Maria. I smiled pleasantly and assured him that I would manage, adding that, unlike other people, I save money rather than spend it on hotel rooms and jewelry. He drained the color from his face, knowing I was aware of everything. I walked out of that coffee shop feeling lighter than I had in weeks, not because I'd won a relationship battle, but because I finally saw Liam for who he was. A man who cared more about appearances than substance, who lied to make himself appear more successful than he was, and who abandoned me when I no longer served his narrative. On Saturday, Aaron supervised while Liam gathered more of his belongings, and I spent the day at a pregnant yoga session, which I highly suggest to anyone suffering with stress during pregnancy. When I returned, the flat felt emptier, but also more my. That evening, I began rearranging furniture, reclaiming the space. Over the next few weeks, I fell into a new routine of work, medical appointments, prenatal vitamins, and cautious budgeting. I wasn't just surviving. I was planning for a future that looked different, but not necessarily worse, than what I'd imagined before. Liam and Maria's romance wasn't exactly blooming, and I learnt from Sergio, who heard from his cousin who works at the cafe where they frequently battled in public, that Maria was more unhappy with her reward. Liam had apparently portrayed himself as much more financially solid than he actually was, which is surprising. The first serious crack came about a month after our coffee shop meeting. I was at the grocery store, carefully comparing prices on prenatal vitamins, when I literally bumped carts with Maria, who looked surprised, ashamed, and stubborn in quick succession. She greeted me uncomfortably, saying I looked well, and I replied that she looked tired, which she truly did, with the same worried face Liam had worn at the coffee shop. The awkward silence between us lasted until she blurted out that Liam had told her we were already separated when they started seeing each other, and that he'd claimed we were basically done, just living together until the lease expired. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing, and she stumbled through what could have been an attempt at justification or apology, saying she wouldn't have gotten involved if she'd known we were still together. I ultimately told her it didn't matter anymore, she had him and should enjoy it. As I turned to leave, she called after me, saying he wasn't who she thought he was, that he promised things he couldn't keep. I looked back at her, this woman I'd once considered a friend, now diminished by her own choices, and told her that sounded like a personal problem that I couldn't help her with. About 6 weeks after the birthday party, I began to show, just a little bump, but unmistakable to anyone looking closely. I decided it was time to be more open about the pregnancy, so I told my boss first, who was incredibly supportive, offering flexible hours for my third trimester, and then I gradually told other friends and family. In social circles, word spreads quickly. I knew it would ultimately reach Liam, but I wasn't going to hide any longer. This baby was happening, with or without his involvement. 7 weeks after the breakup, as my pregnancy reached the 17-week milestone, I received a series of increasingly desperate texts from Liam. Is it true? Are you pregnant? Why didn't you tell me? We need to talk. Immediately. Answer your phone, Anna. This involves me too. I didn't answer any of them, not out of spite, but because I didn't know what to say yet. I needed to digest this new phase and decide what part he should play in our child's life. The texts persisted, growing increasingly urgent. I have rights, you know. You can't keep my child from me. Call me back or I'm coming over. That last one prompted me to finally respond. I warned him not to come to my apartment unannounced, that I would call the police if necessary, and that I would contact him when I was ready to resolve this civilly. He backed off for exactly 2 days. Then, as the title of my original post implied, he showed up. It was just after 11 p.m., and I was in bed reading a pregnancy book and taking notes when I heard it. A car door slamming, footfall on the walk to my door, pounding, not knocking, pounding, and Liam's voice, inebriated but clear. Anna, open the door. I know you're in there. We need to talk about our baby. For a while I sat there, heart racing, wondering what to do. Call the cops? Call Aaron? Hide and hope he leaves? Then I heard something that sealed the deal for me, crying. Liam was outside my door, drunk and crying, alternating between demands and pleas, saying he made a mistake, asking me to let him in, insisting that it was his baby as well. Despite everything he'd done, some small part of me felt recognition, not sympathy exactly, that his grand exit strategy, his new life with Maria, his escape from useless me, wasn't working out as planned. Liam had finally come to terms with reality, which came in the form of an unexpected baby and financial difficulty. I got out of bed, put on a robe, and cautiously approached the door. I didn't open it, but I spoke through it, telling Liam that he was intoxicated and should go home. We could discuss tomorrow when he was sober. He yelled that he needed to see me now, to see if it was true, if we were really having a kid. I affirmed through the closed door that yes, I was pregnant 18 weeks now, and yes, it was his. But this wasn't the way to talk about it, and he needed to leave. There was a thud against the door. His forehead or fist. I couldn't tell. He whispered so quietly that I almost heard it. Maria had left him, saying he wasn't who she thought he was, that he'd lied about everything. I couldn't help but notice that it sounded familiar. He laughed, a hollow sound with no humor. He realized he had made a huge mistake and asked me to let him in, saying all he wanted to do was chat. I took a long breath, one palm resting protectively on my small bump. I declined to let him in tonight, but offered to meet him tomorrow at the cafe on Main Street at 10 a.m. I made it clear that if he didn't show up on time or came up drunk again, there would be no more chances. He was silent for so long that I feared he had passed out, but then he softly consented. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. He promised to be there. I heard him walk away, his footsteps uneven, and a car engine started. Thankfully not his. He had called for a ride, so he had done one responsible thing. As I crawled back into bed, my phone lit up with a message from him. I'm sorry. For everything. For the party. For the note. For tonight. I'll make it right. I didn't answer. Words were easy, and Liam had always been brilliant with words, but I needed action now, especially since I was expecting a baby. Did I still love him? No. It died when he humiliated me in front of our friends. I used to detest him, but I no longer do since it takes energy that I could use elsewhere. I would meet with him tomorrow, listen, set limits, and make a decision based on what was best for me and my child, not what he needed or wanted. Second update. Hello Reddit. I apologize for the wait. Life has been fascinating. So, remember where we left off? Liam showed up drunk to my place after learning about the pregnancy. I promised to meet him at that cafe the next morning, and to be honest, I half expected him not to show up. But there he was at 9:55 a.m., looking like absolute trash, and I mean that in the most objective manner possible, with bloodshot eyes, the same clothing as the night before, and a jittery energy that caused him to jiggle his leg under the table, which was practically trembling. The first thing I noticed was that he had already ordered me a decaf latte, which was thoughtful, but I'd switched to herbal tea since getting pregnant because coffee makes me nauseous now. It was a minor detail, but it summed up everything about Liam. Making assumptions about what I needed without actually paying attention. Anyway, that meeting was a lot. He began with apologies. Lots of apologies. Sorry for the birthday humiliation. Sorry for cheating. Sorry for the financial falsehoods. Sorry for showing up drunk. It was like seeing someone quickly check boxes on a "I messed up" form. I just sipped my tea, ordered a replacement for the unwelcome latte, and let him scream himself out. There's something strangely empowering about remaining silent when someone wants you to reply, you know? When he eventually ran out of steam, I asked the one important question. What did he want? He looked taken aback by the directness, and began rambling about wanting to be involved, doing the right thing, and maybe we could try again. I really laughed at that last part, not maliciously, but honestly shocked that he felt reconciliation was an option. When I told him that I had already consulted a lawyer about child support and custody arrangements, his face lit up with laughter. It was like watching someone realize they were in the deep end of the pool when they thought they were just dipping their toes. I explained that I wasn't separating him from his child, but that trust needed to be developed from the ground up, which included regular visits, financial responsibility, and continuously turning up, not just when it was convenient or Instagram-worthy. He kept attempting to turn the subject toward us as a couple, and I kept steering it back to us as co-parents. He eventually became irritated, accusing me of being cold and calculated. I remembered that his birthday note had also been cold and calculated, but I was doing so to protect our child, whereas he had done so to protect his ego. That silenced him. Before I left, I handed him a packet with information about the baby, ultrasound photos, due date, doctor details, as well as what my lawyer had produced regarding child support. I told him to peruse everything, consult his own lawyer if necessary, and let me know what he thought once he'd had time to think. As I stood to leave, he grabbed my wrist again, what is with the wrist grabbing, and inquired if Maria was aware of the infant. I informed him that it wasn't my knowledge to share, but I hadn't gone out of my way to tell her, and then I gently but firmly removed his hand and went away. Over the next few weeks, I focused on setting up the nursery, which basically meant converting half of my bedroom into Baby Central. Crib from IKEA, which took me and Barbara 3 hours to assemble. Those instructions should come with a translator, I swear. Changing table from a second-hand store, and this adorable mobile with little stars that my mother sent. I'd been putting money aside aggressively, picking up some extra work editing social media content on weekends. It wasn't glamorous, but it helped bridge the gap Liam's contribution had left. My mother also sent some money to help, which was both touching and slightly uncomfortable because I've always been self-sufficient. In the meantime, Liam was processing. He'd text me occasionally, asking about the baby or requesting pictures of the nursery progress, and I'd respond factually, but with emotional distance. When he tried to veer into personal territory, asking if I was seeing anyone, nope, or mentioning a show we used to watch together, I'd gently redirect. Then followed the incident, which certainly needs to be capitalized. I was at Target on a Saturday afternoon, loading up on diapers. You can never have too many, according to every mom blog ever, when I actually bumped carts with Maria again. What are the chances? This time, however, she was not hesitant or defensive. Instead, she was relieved to see me and immediately inquired about how I was feeling and how the pregnancy was going, all while looking genuinely interested. Then she said something that took me entirely by surprise. She apologized. Not a rushed, uncomfortable, sorry not sorry, but a genuine, thoughtful apology, acknowledging the pain she'd caused. She explained that Liam had sold her the same story he'd apparently fed multiple women, that we were basically over, just going through the motions, and that I was holding him back from his true potential. She discovered that he had been seeing another lady while dating her. The irony was not lost on either of us. We ended up grabbing coffee, tea for me, and having this bizarre chat about the man we both now recognized clearly for who he was. Not a monster, but a terribly insecure person who needed constant reinforcement and was willing to lie to obtain it. As we were saying our goodbyes, Maria casually said that Liam had been let go from his job 2 weeks prior, and she thought I should know since it would affect child support. I thanked her for the information and went home, processing this new development. I wasn't happy about Liam's job loss because it made things more complicated, but I was glad to know. That evening, while I was folding little onesies and listening to my favorite podcast, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole, always check the peephole, and saw Liam standing there, sober this time but looking tough. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. He started chatting right away, asking if I'd heard about his job, saying it wasn't his fault and that he was being set up. He then asked if I'd seen Maria recently, which seemed fishy. I told him that we'd run into each other at Target. He inquired what we talked about, and I simply responded, "You mostly." He didn't like that response. LOL. Then he became upset, claiming we were possibly working against him, that everyone was turning on him when he was only trying to do his best in a difficult position. I told him that he created this predicament via his own decisions, and that playing the victim would not work with me. He broke down in crumpled form, stating that his life was falling apart due to a lack of employment, partner, affordable apartment, and unplanned pregnancy. For a brief moment, I felt the usual need to console him, to make things right, but then I remembered the harsh words in that birthday card. "You're useless. I deserve better." Instead of comfort, I provided clarification. I told him he had 2 options: continue his pity party and lose everything, or step up, accept responsibility, and rebuild. For the first time since this whole disaster began, Liam actually listened. No interruptions, no excuses, just listening. When I finished, he nodded slowly and asked if we could talk inside. I hesitated, then consented, but kept the door open. Never completely seal oneself in with someone unstable. We sat at my kitchen table, and for the first time he asked serious questions about the baby, about health, development, and birth plans. As we spoke, I understood something important. I no longer had romantic feelings for Liam, but I did want him to be okay. Not for his sake, but for our child's. Before he departed, He vowed to revisit the child support arrangement and find a new job as soon as possible. And he surprised me by thanking me for not hating him when I should have. I told him that hate consumes too much energy, and I was saving mine for more important things. The next 2 weeks saw slight modifications. Liam found a new job that paid less but was more stable, and he signed the child support agreement without hesitation. He also participated in a parenting class at the community center. As my due date approaches, things feel functional, not perfect. Liam and I have developed a cautious co-parenting relationship based on clear boundaries and expectations. He attends doctor appointments when invited, and he helped assemble the crib when I finally admitted defeat with those ridiculous IKEA instructions. Last week, at 7 months pregnant, I received a parcel from him, which contained a journal, not expensive but simple and practical, with a note that read, "For your thoughts, plans, and any true crime podcast notes you wish to write. You were never useless, I was just too self-absorbed to recognize your worth." I did not answer. Some things do not require acknowledgement. But I did start keeping a journal, primarily to capture this journey, so that someday I can tell our child the intricate, muddy, and very human narrative of how they came to be. Next week, I'll inform you on the upcoming birth and how Liam dealt with the reality of becoming a parent. Because if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that people can surprise you. Sometimes with brutality, sometimes with progress, but always with humanity. Last update. Hello Reddit fam. It's been so long since my previous update that some of you probably forgot about me. LOL. A lot has happened, and I've been meaning to publish, but having a newborn doesn't leave you with much spare time or working brain cells. So, the baby is here. Little Rose was born 6 weeks ago, weighing 7 pounds and 4 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and her father's chin. My binge watching of YouTube birth videos did not prepare me for the reality of labor, which lasted 32 hours. The weird thing is, during those interminable hours of contractions, I kept thinking about how much I'd changed since that hellish birthday party 8 months ago. I was a lady standing in shock, clutching a breakup note, and now I was giving birth to an entire human being. Life comes at you quickly, doesn't it? Liam was at the hospital for the birth, which surprised everyone, including me, and he arrived with this massive teddy bear that literally wouldn't fit through the door of my hospital room. Where did he think we were going to put that thing? In my one-bedroom apartment? But he stayed. Through the waiting, through my not-so-ladylike screams, through everything. Barbara, on the other hand, was my rock. When things got tough, and I thought I couldn't take it any longer, she was there to tell me that I was already doing it. Liam hung awkwardly in the corner, browsing through his phone and occasionally asking if I needed anything, which was at least an effort. When Rose eventually arrived and was placed on my breast, I had a moment of complete clarity. Everything we'd gone through, heartbreak, betrayal, uncertainty, had led to her, and I wouldn't change a single step of the way. When Liam held her, he cried. Not movie star tears, but the awkward, trying not to but can't help it type of crying that made his nose run and his face blotchy. It was the most genuine emotion I'd seen from him in our entire relationship. The first 2 weeks at home were a whirlwind of diaper changes, feeding issues, and sleep deprivation beyond anything I'd ever seen. My mother came to stay for 2 weeks, which was both a blessing and a struggle. She kept reorganizing my kitchen cabinets, because obviously my method doesn't make sense. Liam has been remarkably present, not in a live-in father sense, but 3 times a week for scheduled visits. Sometimes he brings necessary things, like diapers or takeout. Other times he brings absurd baby clothing that are entirely impractical but really cute. Last week, it was a little leather jacket for a 6-week-old, and I didn't have the heart to tell him she'd outgrow it before the weather became cool enough to wear it. Our co-parenting relationship is still evolving. We have moments of tension, especially when he arrives late or cancels at the last minute due to work. But we also have moments when it feels almost normal, like when he noticed I was having trouble with a clogged milk duct and researched remedies before showing up with cabbage leaves and a heating pad. Financially, things have fallen into a manageable routine. Liam pays his child support on time, and I've been able to work part-time from home doing social media management. We're not rich, but we're getting by. My landlord actually let me renew the lease in just my name without any drama, which felt like a small victory. The apartment feels completely different now, with Liam's stuff gone and replaced by baby gear that somehow takes up twice the space. I repainted the living room a soft sage green that makes me happy every time I see it. It's amazing how much your surroundings affect your mood, you know. Maria and I still run into each other on occasion. Our city isn't that big. And it's less awkward now. More like running into a distant acquaintance than someone who blew up your life. The last time, She was with a bearded guy who kept calling her babe every 3 seconds. She seemed happy, if a little forced, and I sincerely hope she is. As for Liam, he's still struggling in certain areas. His new job isn't going well, according to Barbara, who heard from Aaron, who plays basketball with Liam's coworker. I adore small city gossip networks. He moved into this miserable studio apartment, which he always complains about. When he comes to see Rose, I catch him looking around my place with a hard-to-read expression. Nostalgia mixed with regret, perhaps. The strangest development has been Liam's apparent personal growth journey. He mentioned seeing a therapist, which, wow, this is the guy who once told me therapy was just paying someone to listen to you whine. He's been reading parenting books and even joined some dad group on Facebook. I sometimes wonder if aliens abducted the real Liam and left this pod person in his place. Anyway, my own life has also taken some unexpected turns. Remember how I mentioned working part-time from home? That actually came through a connection from Sergio, who recommended me to his sister's company. The work is interesting, the people are nice, and most importantly, I can do it while Rose naps. And there's Eli. Yes, there is an Eli now. He's the delivery guy who kept bringing my grocery orders during those first chaotic weeks postpartum. At first, I barely registered him beyond thank you and please put the bags by the door, because hello, new mom zombie mode. But he started adding little notes to my deliveries, recommending items other parents had found useful, or sometimes just a dad joke that would make me snort laugh. When he dropped off my order and asked if I wanted him to assist take the cases of water to my kitchen, I hesitated since he was a strange man in my apartment. But there was something about him that made me feel comfortable. I hadn't washed in 3 days, and was quite sure I had spit up in my hair. We started talking as he helped put away the groceries, and it turned out that he's finishing his degree in environmental science while delivering groceries to pay the bills. He has a younger sister with 2 children, which explains why he didn't flee my apartment. We exchanged numbers in case there were any problems with future deliveries. We both knew it was nonsense, but it was a convenient lie. We've been chatting, and he stopped by for coffee a few times. It's nothing serious, and I'm not looking to start another relationship, but it's wonderful to talk to someone who isn't interested in discussing diaper brands or sleep training methods. When Liam arrived for his visit last week, Eli was just departing. Liam's expression was complicated, and he casually asked who that guy was. I kept it vague, partly because there wasn't much to share yet, and partly because it wasn't his concern. He made a couple remarks about moving on fast before appearing to catch himself and back down. Barbara believes I should go for it with Eli, but I'm taking it day by day. After all that's happened, I've learned that rushing into things never ends well, and Rose is my focus right now. Dating as a single parent is a whole new ballgame, and I'm still learning the rules. Barbara has been my constant through all of this. When I'm overwhelmed and convinced I'm failing at motherhood, she brings over iced coffee, my first love, finally back in my life now that breastfeeding is going better, and reminds me that all new parents feel the same way. She sometimes takes Rose for a few hours so I can shower, nap, or just stare at a wall in blessed silence. Yesterday was my birthday, and it's been a year since the box that changed everything. Instead of lingering on that memory, I had a small celebration at my house, including Barbara and her husband, Aaron and Sergio, my cousin Lana, and a few other close friends. Liam dropped by quickly to drop off a gift, a surprisingly considerate bracelet with Rose's birthstone, but did not remain. As I glanced about my modest apartment, filled with people who actually care about me, at my daughter sleeping quietly in her cradle, and at the life I've constructed from the ashes of what I thought I wanted, I felt something unexpected. Gratitude. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe Eli will become something meaningful, or maybe he'll just be a brief, kind chapter in this story. Maybe Liam will continue to grow into a decent co-parent, or maybe he'll revert to old patterns. Maybe I'll stay in this apartment forever, or maybe I'll eventually find a house with a yard for Rose to play in. What I do know is that I am not the same woman who stood with that note on her birthday last year. That woman was shattered, but determined. This woman has been rebuilt, making her stronger in the places where she was once broken. So, if there's one takeaway from this lengthy, muddy journey, it's that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can lead to the best version of yourself, not immediately, not easily, but eventually. P.S. If you're wondering what happened to the enormous teddy bear Liam brought to the hospital, it's now serving as a barricade to keep Rose from rolling off my bed when I need to lay her down for 2 seconds to urinate, so I guess it served its purpose after all. For those wondering what happened to Rose's iconic breakup note, I preserved it in a memory box in her wardrobe, among her hospital bracelet, first lock of hair, and positive pregnancy test. When she's old enough, we'll give her the entire story. Not to burden her, but it is also part of her history.